This is the Bob Cordaro Show on TV.
They fought for us, now he'll fight for you. The pursuit of justice and liberty. It's the Bob Cordaro Show on TV.
And now, Bob Cordaro.
Great good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. My name is Bob Cordaro, and this is the Bob Cordaro Show on TV. We're here every Sunday at 11:30 on WNEP TV, and this is a different one. This is special. I was able to get my old friend, Guy Valvano, this 94-year-old sports reporter, sports columnist, sports editor, and author, sat down with us. And it's going to be one of the first shows we've ever done this way with just one guest, the Power Brunch Player of the Week. And that's Guy Valvano. And we're also going, I couldn't stop talking to him. And I could have gone on all day. So we're going to run this on our YouTube edition, the long version. Here you'll get an edited portion of that. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. It's a treasure.
Road Scholar Transport, a higher standard.
Well, our Power Brunch Player of the Week this week is Guy Valvano. I call him Mr. Valvano, but for the sake of the interview, we'll call him Guy. That's how everybody knows him. He's a legend. He's been here covering sports and involved in sports and promoting sports for much more than my life. There has never been a time without Guy Valvano for people of my age and even much younger. And he's a grandfather. He's a great-grandfather. And at age 94, we finally got him to sit down and talk with us. So Guy Valvano, welcome.
Thank you, Bob.
Tell us now, let's go start with your childhood. Tell us a little bit about growing up. Where, when, all that.
I grew up in Mill Street in Dunmore. Number 6, they used to call it then.
That was the coal breaker.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right now we have Erie Shops is right across the street from there, so we can remember things about that.
Yeah.
I know growing up, when we were old enough to play baseball, we used to go up to McKenna's Field up near St. Anthony's Church, which is now the St. Anthony's Playground, and hope that nobody was using the field so we could avail ourselves. And
now the coal mines were active at that time, as were the Erie Shops.
Yeah, and then we would make our way. We used to go to the Erie Shops to go to our church, St. Rocco's in Bunker Hill.
Now, that's before Route 81, right? There was no Route 81 at that time.
Oh, no.
So it was a direct walk over the creek to Bunker Hill.
Yep, we walked through over railroad tracks, and there was even the Lower Line, which has a third rail, which is deadly if you touch it. So
no fences, though, right?
No,
you just had to avoid it.
I had a great childhood. I enjoyed myself. The people around us were very nice, especially the Italian immigrants who were friends of my parents. They treated me just like my mother and my father. I was right at home. And a certain number of them would visit often, and we would visit in response. And it was a wonderful feeling to know that people remember you like that. So,
well, Guy, what did your father and mother do? What did they do?
My father worked in the mines. My mother actually didn't work until the mines was sort of shut down. I don't know what happened, and my mother went to work for some time then, but my dad worked in the mines for, I think, 33 years and eventually was forced to retire because of black lung, and about a year after that, he passed away. It wasn't much of a retirement for him.
How many kids in the household? How many?
At the time, well, I have a sister who died a few years ago, and then I have 2 younger brothers.
So you're raised in a home on Mill Street in Dunmore. You describe, I call it Ozzie and Harriet, but that was pre-TV.
Well, it was nice for us. We had we lived on the 2nd floor. There was 3 floors. There was a former office building, I understand, and my first cousins lived on the floor up above. So, and everybody else was so close to it. It was like everybody was a family.
Yeah.
So it was a great neighborhood.
That's something that people don't do the way they used to. You mentioned visiting.
Yeah, we don't have that anymore.
People visited all the time. I mean, that was a staple.
Yeah.
From your view, did television replace that?
I don't know if it replaced it. I don't know if it could replace it, but it was a great invention, naturally. But I don't know now. You look back at television and you like to see movies that you heard on radio. There used to be Lux Theater. I think it was on Monday night. It was unbelievable. You felt like you were right there with them, and knowing that they're right in front of you, and that wasn't the case. So we got used to that. I know the program The Shadow was on, I think, on Sunday afternoons and different. But one big thing, too, growing up, before I even got into high school, one of the radio stations, I think it was WGBI, had a program on spelling bee. Every week it was on, and there was so much interest in it, at least when I was growing up. I don't know exactly how old I was, but probably the interest stemmed from the fact that one of the top spellers at the time was from Dunmore, and I think her name was Marjorie Gugger, as I recall, and it was great. We used to look forward to seeing it every week.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised nobody reprised it today. And
so you're growing up, you're in the middle of the Depression. As you look back, you know it's the Great Depression. Now, what was it like? Did you feel poor, or was everybody?
The funny thing is, I'm a book collector. I love to read. As much as I can read, I read. And every once in a while, a book comes along and I'm reading about the Depression. One day after the first or second one, I think it was, I said, "Jeepers, I think I grew up in that era." And I remember we got free clothing, and I could tell it was different than what we were wearing.
Yeah.
And then I finally found out that that's why we got it. It was through welfare that people were receiving those things. But I was too young to feel any effect from it. There was nothing missing at home. Like, we still got our meals, thank God.
Yeah.
Our parents provided for us. I think we were dressed appropriately. So that's the only thing I can say about it. Now I read in the books, they don't describe it too much. So I really can't say that, that thing happened and this other thing didn't happen. But it was there.
Well, you certainly remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt and him speaking on the radio. And World War II. What are your memories of World War II as a young kid?
One of my memories is that the Erie Shops is across the street. There's that huge building there, and there's a skylight in there. And during the war, the acetylene torches would be going full blast. And the sparks, you could see the sparks up against them. And we used to like to look at that. And that's, I had an idea then that about the war,
Yeah.
But now I read about it in books, like little portions of it, and I wish I had paid a little more attention to it. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. I remember baseball players going off to war. I remember that.
Yeah. So you always followed sports, and now you're coming of age. And what's your first job? Did you start working out of high school, or what was after high school?
Well, funny things happened. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I was 15 years old, I think, at the time. I was born in 1928. And my mother was after me to get a job. And she kept after me. And I told her, I said, Mom, I have to be 16 years old to get a job. They won't give you working papers unless you're 16. So short time later, she tells me, she said, I got a job for you. Job was at Lackawanna Pants Factory. I dreaded it. I was there about 6 or 7 days, and I think Memorial Day was approaching, and the plant had a clam bake type thing for all the employees at the time. And the foreman come over to me and he said, I need your birth certificate. He said, because of this, you know, to make sure you're eligible to go to this thing. And then I told him I didn't have one. I said, I'm only 15 years old. He hit the ceiling. He said, what are you doing here? And I told him, I said, well, my mother got the job for me. And I said, I told her what was what, you know.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, I got canned. That was the end of my job. Was I happy? The following year, my mother didn't say anything. One of the people in the neighborhood had a responsible job with the A&P warehouse. So that's where I wound up in my junior year.
Yeah.
And during that year, too, Dunmore had an American Legion team. They were the only ones that had it. They wound up playing a game in Copley. And Copley, one of the players on the Copley team was Kurt Simmons, who was eventually signed by the Phillies and had a great career with them. Well, at the time, Dunmore got beat that day, and then they played again the next day. But I happened to be friends with Jimmy Kaplan at the Scranton Tribune, the morning newspaper, and he was aware of the fact that I love sports and that I wanted to be a sports writer. And he asked me if I would phone a game in for him. And I said, certainly. In fact, I was the scorekeeper. They asked me to be.
Do you remember the year, roughly speaking?
Yeah, well, it'd be 28, born in 28. It was my sophomore year. So maybe 15. I was in high school.
Yeah, and that
I was in high
era.
school then.
Yeah.
And anyway, my byline was on the story. So I took work off. I didn't ask to be off. I just took work off. And my byline was on the story. When I got to work that day, the day the paper appeared, the foreman come over, said to me, don't get any ideas about going to the game on Friday. That was the follow-up game. Uh-huh. He said, because if you do, you won't have a job here anymore. So that was another warning on working, you know.
So but you had that taste.
Yeah. But my interest in sports was such that I think about fourth grade in elementary school at Lincoln School, which is situated across from where the Gross Silk Mill is and just below Shout Stadium. I used to, every once in a while, I read the sports pages in the Tribune inside out because they had most of the sports news compared to the afternoon paper. Everything was happening at late afternoon or at night. So I used to form my own newspaper page with sports in there, put stories in there, fictitious stories in or something on an 8 by 10 paper. Yeah. And I forgot about it. And years later, one of my close friends who was in my class told some of my newfound friends or something, they said, he used to put his own paper together. And it sounded funny then to hear that, you know.
Did you go to college? Did you go to school?
I didn't have the opportunity to go to college.
But you could write anyway.
Well,
maybe a testament to how good high school was back then.
Well, nobody in high school ever asked me, no teacher ever asked me if I was planning to go to college because we didn't have the means, first of all, and nobody even discussed it with me. I played basketball. I was on the varsity for 3 years and started for 2 years. I was out for football, and I gave it up after a while. But when I did, I reported the school's football games at the time. And then the same thing with baseball. I went out for the baseball team for the first time, and the coach said to me the next day, he come over to me and said, "You're going to be my scorekeeper." So that's how I got news that I didn't make the baseball team. So I was there with that, and it was nice. And with those different things, I got to know Jimmy Calpin pretty good. And I also ran
another legend.
I ran the baseball and basketball leagues for a while. The baseball thing started up. A couple of my friends who were older students. It was amazing. I knew more people in school who were above me than in my own class. And they said, "Gee, you know, it's something, we don't have an amateur baseball team in Dunmore or something, or league, whatever." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds, we should have one." They said, "I agree with you. Why don't you start one up?" So I did, and I did that for 4 or 5 years. And I used to bring the box scores in. He would run the box scores on it because there was only a couple leagues going at the time compared to what had been before. Before, there was about 20 or 25. Without a doubt, you know.
You remember, this brings to mind Scranton Stadium on Monroe Park in Dunmore, where the Scranton Red Sox played. Did you used to go to games there?
Yeah, we used to go down on Sunday afternoons. There'd be doubleheaders. We'd wait outside, and about the 4th inning, some people would start coming out early, and they would have a pass out, what they call a pass out. They were given. And they would pass them out to us, and we'd go in, sit in the grandstand on a hot day. We didn't have to go in the bleachers. Yeah. And then sometimes the concessionaire was looking for people to pick up empty bottles and things like that. So we'd do that, and we'd get a bottle of soda and a hot dog for it. You know,
which is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, and I think one Sunday I was at a Negro League game there. I think Josh Gibson played.
Really?
I remember people talking about it, and now I've read about the Negro Leagues over the last 4 or 5 years, you know, and it's very interesting with that part of it. And the Scranton Stadium was a very good stadium. The way it was set up, I think center field was about 409, deep center field, and I forget left field might have been 370. And right, the same thing. And it was Class A baseball. But I saw future major league players there. Mel Parnell, what's his name?
Jimmy Pearsall.
Warren
right?
Spahn pitched for Hartford. Yeah. Tony Lupian came right from Harvard, from graduating from Harvard, and played at Scranton, and he was a good player. And Tex Houston, he made the major leagues, quite a few of them. But going to some of the games, every once in a while, at least once a year, Boston Red Sox would play an exhibition game because Scranton was a farm team. And Ted Williams come in one year, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that because we talked with them. But
at some point, go ahead. They
came in, some of these players came in, and they marveled at the stadium, the appearance of the stadium. They said, "We've played in different minor league baseball parks, and they don't even come close to this."
Yeah. Well, Joe Mooney, who went on to become the superintendent of Fenway Park, he started out there.
Yeah, well, before Fenway, he was with Jim Doherty at Washington, the Senators.
Yeah.
He was with him there. That's when that was the first time he became the head man. And Ted Williams was a manager there a while when he was there.
Yeah.
But he was, I read in the Boston Magazine at one time, they wrote an article about him and said he could make a blade of grass talk. That's how thorough he was with it.
And he did it at that Scranton Stadium.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, do you remember when they moved? Because they sold the stadium.
You
mentioned how quality it was. The whole stadium moved.
They sold it to Richmond, Virginia. Yeah. It's on 81. I don't know if it's still there, but I used to read about it being on 81.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, the whole stadium's there.
So Guy Valvano graduates from high school. He's got to go to work. What's his first job?
Well, here's what happens. I'm doing landscaping work for a relative of my parents at the time after graduation. And one day it suddenly hit me. Hey, this is going to run out pretty soon. I don't have a job. And I was already cleared for F. I took my physical and everything, and I was rejected. And then I said, I remembered. Jimmy Kalpman had talked to me when I was running the baseball league. And every once in a while, I got there, he would pull me aside and talk to me. And one of the earlier days, he said to me, I notice you have a big interest in sports. He said, are you thinking of being a sports writer? I said, yeah. He said, well, I can get you a job here.
Wow.
He said, as a copy boy, that's what they want. You have to start as a copy boy. And I said to him, this was during basketball season, I think, or close to it. And I said, Jim, it wouldn't work. I said, I'd love to do it, but it wouldn't work. I said, I have practice, for the team. And he said, I'd arrange for that for you. Then I said, well, then I have the games to contend with. He said, I could do that too. I could not believe this, and I said, I appreciate it very much. He said, well, if you ever decide, let me know. So 10 days later, I think it was, maybe a little longer, that's when it popped into my head that I had nothing to the future. And I called him up and I said, Jim, you told me some time ago about the possibility of copy boy there. And he said, I don't know if there's any openings now. He said, I'll check with the boss and get back to you. He called back a little while later and he said, there's nothing open. He said, but the boss told me he would let me know as soon as something does happen. So, as I said, not too long after that, he called me up, said, there's an opening. If you want the job, you've got to come down tonight. Otherwise, he's going to give it to somebody else. So I went right down.
You walked
short interview.
Did you take the trolley?
And I took it right away and went to work the next day.
And did you stay at the Scrantonian Tribune from that point on?
I worked as a copy boy for 6 months. Then I got promoted to, the next step was correspondence, and I was assigned to East Scranton and Dunmore. And there was a lot of walking to do in that. I used to have to pick up news at the cover council meetings and stuff like that, go to the fire stations and police desks and find out if something happened. I used to have to walk from Dunmore Borough Building up to past Shout Stadium to East Scranton, pick up my stuff there, and then get on the streetcar and go to work from there. I did that for 2.5 years. I was ready to give up because nothing was going on. Nothing was happening. I figured that was a little too long. I wasn't contributing anything at home. I was ashamed. It was a tough situation. So a short time after that, when I was getting disgusted, and one of the telegraph editor called me over and he said, I understand you're thinking of leaving it. He said, yeah. And he said, hang on. He said, we've been trying to get you on the news staff. I said, well, nobody told me anything, to at least, let me know what's what. And not too long after that, I did get on there. That was 1949.
And the Goodman family owned the paper at that time, right?
Goodman and Little.
Yeah, Little.
Yeah.
So you become a reporter, not sports. You're just you're a reporter.
I was on the obituary desk most of the time. And then other times I'd be assigned to the federal building, not too often. And then also there was a VA building. There were different offices in there. That was part of the thing, and I didn't know the first thing about it. Then I was on the Society. I worked on Society, and really? On the day that the Society editor wasn't working, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get off that, But little by little, and in the meantime, the managing editor who hired me came over to me. He said, I notice you hanging around the sports desk a lot. He said, I want you to broaden whatever you're doing. He said, we want people here to be able to do different stuff like that. And I told him, I said, Mr. Powell, that was his last name. And he said, I love sports. I said, if I can't do the sports, then I said, I probably won't be here. So he just walked away. But little by little, 1972, I think I got to do some sports after getting on the staff, but it took a while. But in 1972, I was appointed assistant sports editor. Chick Feldman died, and Jimmy Kalpin moved up from assistant to sports editor. And then I had that until about 1983, when I was appointed as sports editor to the Scrantonian, which is the Sunday edition. Mm-hmm. And I basically, before I contributed a lot to the Sunday edition, I used to dig up feature stories to run on Sundays. I just loved to do it.
Yeah. All right. So and then how long do you work at the Tribune?
I was there 43 years.
43 years total.
With all that. It was a wonderful experience, great environment. The people around me were fantastic, especially the older ones. I could go to them for advice, and they were, right off the bat, they would help. And I did that quite a bit.
Well, I remember sports guidelines. And if you got in there when you were in high school, you did cartwheels all the way to school. And that was a big column. And you had to do a lot of work to go to specific high school athletes and college athletes and find out what they were up to. But that was a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, when I got in that situation, I used to read the paper quite a bit, and I noticed the outlying school districts just got small pieces in the paper, like they were nothing. And I said to myself, "Jeepers, if I was working there, I would be, exploiting them too." And there's a little bit of it still going on.
Yeah.
Sort of like in the background, not really that bad, but right now, the Scranton Times, the sports section, I can't imagine a sports section in the country being as good as theirs. They have everything. They have everything. And like in those days, so I got to know a lot of people on the outskirts.
Sure. Those
districts, and they were wonderful. They were happy that we were interested in them, and consequently, my schedule just grew and grew and grew. I take information on games at different times, and I'd be talking to the coach sometimes, and sometimes the scorekeeper, and I'd inquire about somebody that looked like they were doing pretty well, and I develop a story from that. One of the funniest incidents happened, I have to tell you this, is during basketball season. I think the game was called in from Forest City, and the female scorekeeper, and she started with the names, and there was Slovak and Polish names and Italian names too, and a couple of them, they were hard to spell. I memorized them after seeing them in the paper. I get to the third name, Jones, and the scorekeeper says Jones. That actually happened. I'm not making it up.
Well, in your 94 years, you've seen a lot. But now you're with the Scrantonian Tribune. You're the sports guy. You're literally the sports guy. And you're covering high school very heavily. You're covering some college. University of Scranton had a lot going on.
Yeah.
But you have an opportunity then for national and national level athletes that are either coming through town or have a connection to the Scranton area. Who is the most? Well,
I tell you one thing. I knew Paul Foytak very well. He was from Petersburg. I played a ball against him. He pitched for the Detroit Tigers and Los Angeles Angels. and I knew him, and we had a ticker tape, Western Union ticker tape, and I used to follow him completely.
Yeah.
Every fortnight, I figured he'd be pitching, and they would run the innings on there, how many hits were given up and everything else, and I would write something from that right after the game. And I tried to do that with other athletes from our area that were in professional baseball.
We had Dick Trzaskowski.
Pardon?
Dick Trzaskowski, if you remember Dick Trzaskowski.
Oh yeah, Dick, yeah.
And
I got to talk to him a lot. He started with Detroit, and he wound up with the Dodgers at a great time, and became a roommate of Sandy Koufax.
He brought Koufax in.
Yeah, I know. He brings him in every year to play golf.
Yeah.
And he's been mentioned in the books. I read a couple of Koufax books. He's mentioned in there.
Yeah. Who was the most interesting athlete that you covered?
The most interesting. It's pretty tough. Lou Costanzo sticks out with me because of his, I don't know how to describe him. He was a fantastic football player, started every game of his 4 years of high school, and linebacker and running back.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the best I saw. Donnie Jonas was another one who went places. And baseball and even football, Paul Denenbaum was outstanding. Dick Trzaskowski. I come across a book that I just read. Southern League was the title of the book, and it was about integrating Negroes into the major leagues. And Joe Grisenda is mentioned prominently in the book. I was amazed to see it in there. And the nicest thing in there, they mentioned a couple different times that he was regarded as the best, most popular player anyway to play for Birmingham. That was the book. The book was mostly about Birmingham.
Yeah. What was the most important sports story that you covered in your idea?
The one that sticks out with me was I covered a baseball game. Not baseball, basketball game. Central played Old Forge at the Scranton CYC. And Old Forge had a long winning streak under the late Elio Gigerelli. I'm pretty sure that's the way it was. And Central beat them in the game. It was such a thrilling game. When I sat down, it seems like my fingers hit the right typewriter keys at the same time, and the story just flowed out. And afterwards, a few days afterwards, different people were complimenting me on the article. And I looked back and I said to myself, I was a little pleased by it. And it seems like that was it. I loved covering football the most of anything. I thought that was the best sport to be covered. You get baseball and you get 9 innings of nothing, and but football, there was always something happen about, something to write about.
What's your favorite football story?
Football? I don't know. I didn't get a chance to cover the game when Dunmore won the first state championship in the second year of his existence, 1989, I think it was.
Yeah.
I didn't handle it, but I did write a story on the side because the game was started in the morning, and the last time they played a game that started in the morning was against West Scranton, I think, and it was the year that they switched. They used to play in the afternoon, but they switched it, and the ball bounced all over the place into the hands of West Scranton's players, and they wound up beating Dunmore and knocked them out of the championship.
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember that part. It sticks in my mind.
Now, in the midst of your job, you started to write elsewhere, and you wrote books. Tell us about them.
What about that?
The books that you wrote.
Yeah, what about them?
Tell me about them.
Well, the first one.
That's an effort.
Yeah, what happened was the late Joe Flannery, who succeeded me as a correspondent at the Tribune, and then eventually got a good position at the Times. He was a columnist for him. after he retired, and I think I was retired too. And he said to me 2 different times. For the first time, he said, "Did you ever think about writing a book?" I said, "No, not really, you know." So I think he brought it up again another time. And then one day, I think it was a warm day, it had to be in the summer, I was sitting around doing nothing, and all of a sudden I said, "Geez, why didn't I think of it? I could write a book about the Dream Game. You know, I have kept all the records on it. I kept every newspaper from every game, and then I did research on the other team. I went right down to the basement on the typewriter and started into it and continued the flow of it. And before I knew it, I was done with it. I was surprised at how it was rather simple, you know.
Yeah.
And then the others came along. I did a couple of books on the University of Scranton, one on the men's team and women's team that won national championships. The men's won 2. And then I did one on Jack Henses and his father, another one on Frank Pizzaglia with Valley View, and one on the late Joe Boquicho, who was a soccer coach at the University of Scranton, and one on the Fury Caesar Award. And it became interesting, and I wish I were doing it now because I learned so much from the books that I read. There's questions that I could have asked, so many different questions I could have asked that would have made it so simple.
Yeah.
You know, much simpler anyway.
Well, I've read them all. They're great reads.
Thank you.
They're easy to read.
Thank you.
Informative. You were a great writer. There's not even a doubt about that.
You're very kind.
Well, only because I tell the truth.
But I'm there's times I'm reading and I come across some great authors and I'm awed. I'm really awed. I stop reading just to concentrate on what I just read.
Yeah.
Like part of the things that I just read, they're so good. Like books like the Boys of Summer, you know, along those lines, and they were great.
And you still read today, but you read and read. You always read. You always read books.
You know, I love to read. The only thing that stops me is I get tired, and then sometimes I fall asleep, the book hits the floor, and then I get back and I start reading and I say, "Geez, I read this part yesterday."
You're not the only one.
And I hate when I have to give it up at night.
Yeah.
You know, I could just feel when I'm starting to skip over words, and so I stop, and then I can't wait to get to the next book. But the book I'm reading now, I told you, about Jackie Robinson, is unbelievable. It has stuff in there that I didn't read in any of the 4 or 5 others that I read. This guy, this author, I think his name is Ed Henry. I never heard of him. He went back and talked to people in the family, his wife and his kids, and they had in their possession, among other things, a memoir that he put together that was not published, that he didn't publish. And there's so much in there about him and Branch Rickey.
Yeah.
And then he visited Ralph Branca, Carl Erskine, and a lot of the other players. Visited them and got comments from them in connection with the book, and did a fantastic job on it.
Two sports books that, I don't know, they were groundbreaking in some ways, maybe not as much as I think. But you as a reader, do you remember the book Ball 4 by Jim Bouton?
I read the book, and not too long ago, I came across a book about him. The title was Bouton. I never realized how talented he was when it came to even life.
Yeah.
But the book told about the Yankees' reaction to it, the players' reaction to it, and from that book,
because he told it all.
Yeah, well, he covered so much.
Yeah.
And he came across so many people. I don't know how he did all the things that he said in there. And he had a great foundation for being a book writer.
Yeah.
You know, and then there was another book came out too, and I forget exactly the title of that one. And I think maybe one more beside it, but Jim's name would turn up in some different books, and he'd be there for introductions or stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But I was amazed at how talented he was.
Now, another groundbreaking sports book that I read, because he told it all just the way Boughton did, was Joey, You Could Have Made Us Proud, the book by Joe Pepitone. Did you read about Joe Pepitone?
No.
Oh,
I had a bat that was autographed by Pepitone. Yeah, the late Jim Brazetti gave it to me.
Oh, yeah.
I gave it to my son Guy.
My friend Jim Brazetti.
But I didn't realize there was a book about him.
It's called Joey, You Could Have Made Us Proud.
I have to look it up.
You will, and
I've bought about, in the last 8 or 9 years, I've bought about 80 books online from Abe Books, ABE. It's amazing. A lot of them are only $4 and $5 free shipping.
Well, you gave me a bunch when I got out of prison. You brought them up. Guy Valvano came up to my house and gave me a series of sports books to read while I was on home confinement. I obviously will never forget that.
I was happy to do it. I'm still doing it. We'll get you some more.
So you read, but you've got a great family.
Thank you.
You've been married for how long?
It'll be 70 years next Tuesday.
I shouldn't ask because I figured I'd get you in trouble, but you remembered. 70 years Tuesday.
Yeah.
And your granddaughter
that's
Tiffany.
The 11th, right?
Yeah. Your granddaughter Tiffany brought you here. You've got grandchildren. I know all your kids. You've got grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Yeah.
So a very full family life.
Yeah. We have a wonderful family. I've been blessed.
And that Schwartz Street neighborhood was also a great neighborhood with a lot of characters.
Yep.
You know, people like Spike Carlucci, Pete Tonetti, who just died, just passed.
Your son,
Yeah, the son. You were a true Dunmorean. I don't think there's anyone who could wear that title of Dunmorean better than Guy Valvano.
Oh, I love Dunmore.
Yeah.
I love people.
Yeah. It's always a difficult question to answer, but what would you like people to remember about Guy Valvano?
That I try to do the right thing. I pray to God and try to do the right thing.
Well, you did. Guy Valvano, thank you so much. Honor to be with you, and we're going to love watching this show.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Road Scholar Transport, a higher standard.
Well, that's it for today. There's more to the interview. And the full interview can be found on YouTube under The Bob Cordaro Show on TV. Please look for it because it's history. It's important. It's Guy Valvano. And all I have to say is Guy Valvano. Wow, what an honor.
Thanks for being part of the program. You've got an appointment every Sunday morning at 11:30 right here on WNEP-TV.
They fought for us, now he'll fight for you.
On TV.
The pursuit of justice and liberty. It's the Bob Cordaro Show on TV.